I'm going to call the city council work session to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon,
Here.
Counselor Weber,
Here.
Counselor Moe,
Here.
Counselor Rodley,
Here.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Here.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Here. And Counselor Blackwell is excused for the evening. We have 2 items for the work session this evening. Community Development Advisory Committee interviews with Aaron Fifield. Come on up. Yeah. You're on. Good.
I'm deaf. Both are here already. Any questions before I bring them in?
No, I think we are ready to bring in the first applicant.
Great. We'll start with John Aaron, and his application is in your packet.
Good evening.
Thanks for joining us, John.
My pleasure.
Take a seat. We're got a couple of questions to ask about your application.
Okay.
But I don't know that you know everybody. So we're going to start and let everybody introduce themselves, even though we have name tags. Why don't you start, Michelle?
Hi, Michelle Weber. Hi there, Victoria Doyle.
Good to meet you.
I'm Corey Rodley, she, her pronouns. I'm in Ward 3.
Nice to meet you.
Sean Van Gordon, Mayor.
Joe Pictionary, Ward 6, Thurston area.
Steve Moore, Ward 2.
All right.
Oh, great to
We're-
meet you all.
We're down one tonight. So what strengths or skills would you bring to the CDAC committee?
I believe my background in building affordable homes and 30 years of residential construction. And I run currently am the project manager for Habitat for Humanity. So we are dealing with the affordable housing crisis firsthand.
How do you think the work of CDAC improves our community?
I think just through the communication process, you know, and tapping into the community and having that advisory that committee, you know, feedback for the council.
All right. And if you could make one positive change in Springfield, what would it be?
I would go back to the housing. I would just increase our affordable housing.
All right. We only had 3 questions.
Okay.
So thank you so much for coming in. We've got one more interview and then we will have staff let you guys know.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great to meet you.
I'll just add our next interview is Sherry Moore, and I will bring her in.
Good evening.
Hello, Sherry.
Hi. Boy, this cold, dark night just reminds me of why I retired from city council. If no one has told you guys lately, thank you for being here and
Well,
what it takes.
the temperature of this room's never changed.
Good, but you've done some reorganizing. It looks nice.
I think you know everybody.
Well, Michelle and I, not a lot, but a little, yeah.
So I'll just jump right into the questions. What strengths or skills would you bring to CDAC?
Well, I have a pretty good understanding of what the committee does. I actually was city council rep, I think, on it for a while. And so I understand that dispersing federal funds is an important part of what we do in the community. And so making sure that that's done equitably and that kind of thing.
And how do you think the work of CDAC improves our community?
Well, again, dispersing those federal funds in a way that provides affordable housing to the most number of people in the most efficient way is what its goal is, I assume.
All right. And if you could make one positive change in Springfield, what would it be?
Wow. You guys, Springfield has become so great. I'm not sure I can think of one positive thing, but I think anything that you can do, again, to involve the public is always a positive thing. And I've tried to be involved a little bit, but as I said, wow, it's cold and dark at 5:30. Oh, I did want to say too, that I don't know when that application was. Was it like August or September I signed up for this? I wasn't near as busy then as I am now. So if you find that you have a more qualified candidate, I'm more than happy to step aside. It was because you were having difficulties getting candidates and I thought, oh my gosh. And I talked to Erin and she talked me into it. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming down. It's good seeing you, Sherry.
Yeah, it's nice seeing you all too. You at it. Good work.
All right. I'm gonna look around and see what people are thinking about this appointment. It's one appointment, correct, Erin?
Correct. There'll be one vacancy in January.
I believe Sherry made the decision for us, so she sort of opted out.
Yeah, I appreciate
And the other
her.
candidate is very, very well.
Yeah, I appreciate Sherry being just, forthcoming with that. And I am supportive of John.
Okay. Counselor Rodley?
Thank you. I get to be official. I think it's exciting. Having both of them is great because they both are bringing different experience. And I also think that John would be a great addition. And notice that Sherry applied for both the budget and the planning commission. So we could see her back again, depending on what the need is. So I also concur with John.
All right, I think you've got your marching orders, Erin. One piece of feedback that I think it's worthwhile on for CDAC is we're in a big housing shortage and it's easy to see a lot of our challenges through that housing shortage and just to keep talking to people about the importance of, CDBG money can be economic development money as well, right? So we always want to see a variety of projects anytime we can. It's not just 100% housing money.
Thanks.
Thank you, Erin.
Yep.
All right. Next item looks like it's Dan Hurley with Lane County with the Integrated Material and Energy Recovery Facility. Or the IMERF. And Dan, yes, it's push to talk.
Just once and it'll stay on.
Okay, great. All right.
I know you've got a couple of slides. Do you want us to save our questions until the end so you can get through the slides?
That would be preferred. Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, good evening, Mayor and councilors. Thank you for your time this evening. We're really excited to talk to you about a big project of the county called the IMRF. It's the Integrated Materials and Energy Recovery Facility. I know that's a mouthful. I'm Dan Hurley. I'm the Public Works Director at Lane County, and I'm joined by Jeff Orlandini. Want to introduce yourself, Jeff?
Yes, I'm Jeff Orlandini. I'm the manager for the Waste Management Division, Lane County Public Works.
All right. So we've got some slides to go through for the project. This is a project that's been in the works for several years. The timeline is in your packet of how we got here. It's an exciting project because it's multiple projects in one. It's a climate project. It's an economic development project. It's an infrastructure project because it will extend the life of the landfill and add infrastructure to our waste management system here. And I'll take you through the objectives of the project and key features and local economic impact. Jeff will kind of get into more of the details around what the system is, and then we can talk about the impact to rates, and then we can even talk about the Glenwood Transfer Station, if you'd like to talk about that, because I know it's a higher priority for the council. So getting into the slides here. So the objectives for the project, this started as a way to try to get us to meet our goal for recovery of waste. We call it our recovery rate. It's something that we have to report to through the state, and DEQ compiles the numbers. We've been at around a 50% recovery rate for quite a few years. We were at a 53. We're actually just under that right now. And it's not so much the number, but it's about trying to keep materials out of the landfill, to conserve landfill space, to mitigate the impacts of the landfill. What a lot of people don't know is the landfill has a significant impact on the environment. We do everything we can there to make sure it doesn't impact groundwater and things like that. But when waste decays in the landfill, it produces methane, and methane is a harmful greenhouse gas. And so the landfill is actually the second largest stationary source of methane emissions in the county. And so we're trying to improve our impact there, or lessen our impact there. This is a big jobs project. We'll get into some more slides that talk about the number of jobs, but this means jobs for Springfield residents that work at Springfield companies. And some people have said that the timing isn't great for this project because of economic factors. Some could say that the timing is perfect for an influx of a large project like this that brings a lot of federal money into our area to create jobs. We've tried really hard to keep this at a low impact to the ratepayer, and I'll get into the rates when we get to the end of the presentation here. Another objective is to use proven processing systems. We don't want to use something that's brand new and potentially fail. We are looking at systems that are tried and true. We've gone to California to look at some of these systems. We've toured bulk handling systems facilities, and I'll mention that right now. So this is a public-private partnership. We're trying to do this in a way that brings private investment into this. And the way we have this structured is a private firm, Bulk Handling Systems, is our partner on this. We went through an RFP process and selected Bulk Handling. They are a local firm here, a manufacturer in Eugene that produces processing facilities, processing equipment all over the world. So we went down to California and looked at several of the facilities that are operating down there, and it's pretty amazing the technology that is brought into this to achieve these objectives. So some of the key features, it would be a state-of-the-art facility using very advanced technology, even AI robotics that are able to pull waste off of quickly moving conveyor belts. And it's exciting to be able to move to a high-tech sort of facility, because some of these material recovery facilities that are operating elsewhere in the state are pretty dirty jobs where people are pulling stuff off the line and pretty challenging conditions. This would also be sort of 3 facilities in one. We would be able to sort the garbage that comes in from residential garbage trucks and pull out the recyclables that shouldn't be in there, the organics waste, food waste, things like that can be produced, go into an anaerobic digester. That's my third bullet there to talk about. The food waste can be instead of in the landfill decomposing, can decompose in what's called an anaerobic digester and produce methane in a higher capture way so that we're not emitting so much methane. And that can go into fuels for transportation. And then the second bullet there was about the other part of the facility that would be able to sort blue bin commingled recycling. So instead of trucking our recycling clear up to the Portland area to be sorted, we'd be able to sort that here and be able to supply those commodity bales locally or be able to market them from here. The fourth bullet there is about the outputs out of the anaerobic digester. There would be the leftover processed waste, which we'll be able to use at the landfill for cover material. Landfills use a lot of soil, and we have to import that soil onto our site. So this would be a big cost saving for the landfill over time. And then the last piece there is we'll have an educational facility, really exciting to be able to teach the next generation about, the best ways of processing waste and handling our garbage. So we would have tour groups coming through there probably through a contract with Bring Recycling to teach the next generation. Again, this is a big economic development project, 135 million construction value. And we're looking at teaming with local firms. So Chambers Construction has been integral in this project. They completed a 30% design so that we could refine the cost for this project. Bulk Handling Systems partners with Far West Steel for all the production of their materials. That's a company located here in Springfield. And Bulk Handling Systems, again, a Eugene company. The economic revenue from the plant estimated at $38 million. Lots of direct jobs during the construction, over 190 jobs, and then 65 jobs ongoing to maintain the facility. And then we had an economic analysis done by a third party. I think that needs to be updated there. On the next slide, we'll get into that. Over a $272 million impact, I think is what the number is when we get to the next slide. And it's an employment piece, for the people that will be operating this facility. We're looking at a minimum of a 25-year operation and would hope to extend that well into the future. The landfill currently has a landfill life of about 70 years. We can extend that with the use of this facility by at least 20 years. And so this you can't read, it's too small, but yeah, $272 million economic impact estimated by a third party, Onward Eugene. And I'll pass now to Jeff.
So one of the big benefits, obviously, for us is besides the diversion is the greenhouse gas reductions and being able to capture those, like Dan said, on the front end of our process, we call it. So instead of waste, slowly creating that methane gas and being captured over years with a large fugitive emission rate, being able to capture that on the front end, pull it out of those organics before anything enters the landfill. And so we estimate the decrease in those CO2 emissions to be somewhere around the equivalent of taking 6% of the cars off the roads in Lane County. Just because I know for me, sometimes that's easier to wrap my head around than a big 88,000 number. And so really excited about being able to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions and then also to capture that, put it on the natural gas pipeline and possibly in the future partner with someone like LTD to maybe fuel buses with that. So that's when we get into the RNG production. Again, just showing the benefit of being able to capture that gas and capture it in a much faster and more efficient way. Dan talked a bit about the recyclables as well. So as folks know, we have the Recycling Modernization Act that's coming online in 2025. The Bulk Handling Systems believes that having a recycling facility, processing facility here in Lane County can take advantage of a lot of the changes coming online with that Recycling Modernization Act and being able to market materials here from Lane County as opposed to sending them somewhere else to be marketed by a third party. And that will allow us to have, increase the types of recyclables we can take, both through this facility inherently, and then also with the changes coming from the Recycling Modernization Act, being able to accept a lot of those materials that we used to be able to put in our bins and can no longer do that. I'm really excited as a former educator about the education center and being able to have that on site with viewing platforms to look at the operation. It's going to be located in Goshen, which is great because it's a great place to have student groups and other groups stop, see the facility, learn about how we manage waste in the county, and then go see the landfill as well. And so really excited about being able to have that. It'd be up on a second floor and look directly down on all three of those lines in the facility. You want to talk about the partnership?
Sure. So the way this would be set up, there we go. The way this would be configured with the arrangement is that the county would purchase the property. We're looking at a property in Goshen, about a mile before you get to the landfill. They're between Highway 99 and Interstate 5. We would own the building, do the site preparation we would do the site preparation and construct the building at a cost of about 35 million. Bulk handling systems would then supply the equipment that goes into the building and also run the operation to do the sorting and anaerobic digestion running the facility. So that's the structure there. We're still working out the final details on the contract, which will relate to the costs. This will help us meet our solid waste goals, our climate action plan goals, and on the timeline, we're looking at about a 24-month construction where we'll be going to the board for an update on November 27th and for a decision on December 12th. And we're trying to move this timeline quickly because we need to start construction by the end of next calendar year to be able to capitalize on very significant federal incentives that aren't going to be around if we delay on this project. And so here's a schematic of where the facility would overlay onto an aerial photograph of in Goshen. So the first building there is Weyerhaeuser, if you're familiar with the facility. So it would be kind of tucked in behind that as you're heading to the landfill. Here's another picture of it from Interstate 5. So as people are coming into our community, they'll be able to see this flagship facility. Very excited for some development to happen in Goshen. The Board of County Commissioners has been trying to do some economic development in Goshen for quite some time. Here's a schematic of the internal workings of the facility, and I have a couple zoomed in views. It would be full of sorting equipment that uses really high-end technology to pull out the recyclables in different ways. So one half of it would be of the sorting equipment. Part of that's for the commingle sorting line and part of it's for the garbage sorting line. And then the anaerobic digester would be on the other side of the facility. So that's a quick overview of the facility. We threw out some big numbers there and costs of the project. So you're probably wondering, what's this going to cost and what's it mean to me and what's it mean to your constituents? So we're still working on the numbers. I think we're going to be able to actually get our estimates down from what we talked with the board about a month ago. When we were with the board, we laid out kind of the worst case scenario. If we don't get any sort of additional funding into the project from some grant opportunities that we're going to be applying for, which we think we have a pretty good shot at, and sort of really rough estimates on the revenues that we'll receive through this partnership with bulk handling systems. To be able to offset costs. So when we talked to the board, we talked about a 6-year financing plan that would be over the CPI. So we're talking about a kind of a baseline CPI that we have to do every year anyway, of about 3%, and we would be doing that regardless. And we have to do that to pay for the infrastructure at the landfill. So our last landfill cell cost $20 million. So those types of things. With this project, we'll be able to delay those projects so they won't come as quickly, and that helps with the revenue side of this project. But we looked at a 6-year price increase of an 8% in year 1, in 8% in year 2, 3, and 4, and then a 5% and a 2%. And that sounds like a lot, and it is. However, people should realize that those increases are only part, so that's what people would pay, that's what trucks would pay at the landfill, or at this facility, rather. When people look at their garbage bill, they don't know that only about 20% of that bill is the portion for the landfill disposal cost. The rest is made up of personnel costs and trucking and fuel and things like that. So you take those numbers and take 20% of those, and that's the impact to people's rates. And so it's about 20% for a residential customer. It's about 30% for a commercial customer. And so the way that works out is people are looking at about a 2% increase on their rates for those 11% years, which equates to about a 50 to 60 cent increase on people's garbage bills. So we think that that's, you know, pretty minimal, that people probably won't notice that so much and feel that. And the other benefits kind of outweigh those smaller incremental costs of the jobs in the community, the extending this resource for a whole generation, you know, a 20 to 25 year increase to the life of the landfill that we may not see in our current lifespan, but it'll mean something to future generations to be able to have this infrastructure of value for the county. So I think that covers the rates piece of it. For the commercial customers, where they're looking at about a 3% increase for those each of those years on average over a 6-year time span. So I think that's it. The only other piece would be to talk about the Glenwood Transfer Station. These are separate projects. You know, there would need to be separate funding to move the transfer station. We've gotten to this point with this project because it's been a multi-year vetting process where we committed to a goal, and then we went through a series of vetting criteria to do a design, to get cost estimates, those various things. You know, I would suggest if we want to get on a path for relocating the transfer station, we would need to go through a similar vetting process. And I would be willing to commit to trying to do that with you. But I think it needs to be conversations with the Board of County Commissioners and to align with the city's goals. So I'll leave it there and take your questions. Thank you for your time.
Well, thanks, Dan. We're going to start with Corey.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this. And I just have a couple of questions to start with because I'm sure other folks have questions as well. I know initially there was a request of the state legislature to invest in this project, and I think that they didn't. But do you anticipate any future funding possibly coming from the state, either to the county or maybe perhaps to the company that's doing it to help offset some of it? Do you have any anticipation of that?
Thank you, Counselor. Yes, we anticipate that if we get a yes vote from the county commissioners on December 5th, that the state will come in with some no interest bonding for the project to the amount of $34 million. So that's huge for this project, and we're still hopeful on that. We've had a lot of conversations with different politicians at the state level, and there's general support for it. The problem has been that housing has been such a big issue that's where the bulk of funding has gone in the last legislative session. We do hope to bring an ask back. We asked for $15 million in the last session and didn't get anything, but I think we need to pitch it more as an economic development project and have the state understand the importance of that. So we do anticipate going back to ask for money from the state.
Great, thank you. And I have one more piece to my question. One of the lenses that I bring as I'm always looking at, like, what are things going to look like 10 or 20 or 30 years down the line? And so I'm curious if you have given any thought to what happens if we do not do this now? Like, will it increase expenses? Will we have, I'm just curious as to if that's been part of your sort of risk planning, is to think about, if we don't do this, then what?
Thank you, Counselor. If we don't do this, then we kind of continue business as usual. We would continue to work with EPUD. They're our partner out at the landfill. They currently capture gas from the landfill. And just inherent with that system, it's not terribly efficient. It's been running at about a 50 to 60% efficiency rate. So they've done some improvements that may be getting that up, but we haven't seen current numbers. But still, that's a lot of emissions coming from the landfill. So that will continue. They're kind of invisible, silent emissions, but that's happening. So that would continue. We would continue to fill up our landfill kind of at the current rates and investment. But really, it's looking down the line and not knowing what the future holds for a new landfill. So, you know, that's quite a ways down the line, but other communities are starting to face that now. So Douglas County, Coffin Butte up by Marion County, they're looking at less than 15 years left in their landfill. I'm glad we're not in that situation. We have this resource that's unique and that it's owned by the county. We have some of the lowest garbage rates in the state because we don't operate at a profit. So even with these increases, you know, we're not getting anywhere near the higher ends of what people are paying like in the Portland area. So I think it's just looking further down the line of not having a landfill when that, you know, comes full. But that is a long way down the line.
Joe, and then we'll go to Victoria.
Thank you. Evening, Dan. I got a couple questions and I'm gonna challenge you the whole way because I have a hard time swallowing these types of numbers and I have a hard time swallowing it only boil down to a 56 or 50 cents to 60 cents financial impact to ratepayers.
Per month.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I'm looking at those numbers but I'm also wondering on this greenhouse gas emissions, is that a self-imposed mandate as far as that's what Lane County leaders want to do is reduce the gas emissions, or is that a state requirement?
Currently, Councilor, great questions. So the first piece is with those big numbers, how it kind of gets to small numbers. You know, we're talking about what the percentages of that tipping fee we talked about, and then down to a monthly increase. And then we're talking about a period of over 6 years. So, and then how that gets to big money is that there are, you know, just a lot of customers and a lot of tonnage coming in the landfill. So
those are
but,
stacked.
yeah,
Those are stacked.
those are stacking. So when we're talking,
In a-
you know, 4 years from now, we're talking about, you know,
About $250 a month.
$250 a month. Yeah. But then what I tell people is, you know, Netflix increased $4.50 a month over the last 4 years. People didn't even notice it, you know?
Netflix is.
Yeah,
garbage.
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm just gonna give you a bunch of them, you can think about them all. And so we're talking about tipping fees and that is a commercial cost. And so the commercial folks that supply that service are gonna pass that on to ratepayers. So that's part of that 50 and 60% increase you're anticipating, right? But I mean, that's the
Correct,
result.
correct, yes.
So is miles, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's been, I don't know if you want to call it rumor or estimations or talk of requiring regional waste haulers and not allow them to tip anywhere else but here.
So Counselor, we are not talking about flow control at this point. So flow control is requiring waste to come to the facility. We think that we can operate this in an economical manner where it's beneficial to the haulers to come here. But you know, when you talked about 80% of the cost being trucking personnel, all that, you know, that would be very expensive to drive to the nearest landfill up to Coffin Butte. We think there'll actually be some savings to the haulers here because it'll be closer than to the landfill. They won't have to drive up onto the ever-changing gravel roads up on the landfill to save time. Time is money for them. We'll also have a place where they can bring the commingled recycling and not have to truck that clear up to Portland. So we're hoping that those offset actually the increases to tipping fees and that it will just make economic sense for the haulers to continue.
That's kind of an unknown for right now.
We also don't know that we even have the legal authority to require flow control in the cities. So our county council is looking at that, but we're hoping that we can operate this in a way that doesn't need that. The people, you know, the haulers would want to use this facility.
And so they're looking at a 44% increase over the next 4 years after, if it starts, 44% tipping fee increase, which is a pretty hefty increase in business costs. And so again, they're gonna go right to us and say, we gotta bump ours up 11% a year to make up that difference.
Yeah, on their 20% of their costs. So, you know, take 20% of that 44%. So, but again, I'm just trying to, you know, paint this as an infrastructure cost. You know, when we talk about the wastewater treatment facility, you know, they have to do we had a 19% increase, you know, a few years ago. And some pretty significant ones that were in this range to build, you know, large capital investments in the wastewater treatment plant. There are just, you know, significant investments that need to happen for the long-term for infrastructure. Then I didn't get to your second question and I forget what it was. Sorry.
It was actually
The emissions part.
dovetailed. The emissions, and then you were speaking of the gas recovery, methane gas recovery. and putting it into the fuel system and basically an RNG facility? And have you priced out what an RNG facility would cost about?
So, Counselor, the first question about what's driving this on the emissions goals, that is at the county level. That was part of our climate action plan and trying to address, our big impact opportunities. So, however, I'm anticipating the way things are going with regulating landfills, and there was a governor executive order that we're going to have to follow the most stringent standards of our neighboring states. California is getting very stringent. The EPA is really clamping down on limiting greenhouse gas emissions from landfills and potentially, looking at food waste prohibitions. So I think this would help us get ahead of what I see coming as federal drivers for these emissions reductions.
Because we built one locally here at MWMC, and the cost for that facility was $14 million.
So, and then to your piece about the RNG facility, that is priced into this. So that's kind of those 3 facilities here in one. The anaerobic digester is that piece of it, and bulk handling systems has several of these facilities operating and knows the pricing on them, and so that's part of this arrangement. And they're working on an agreement with Northwest Natural to purchase that gas and then potentially have that available for offtakes for transportation fuels.
As long as you got a buyer.
Yes.
Because it's way all over the place right now. So, yeah, okay, thank you.
Victoria?
Thank you. Thanks for coming. I actually heard some of this in your Lane County meeting last month or something when you presented it. Has there been much public input on this?
There hasn't been a lot of public input. We've talked about this at several times with the board, and there's always the opportunity for public and public comment. We have been engaging our solid waste stakeholders as a group of haulers and city officials that come to those roughly quarterly. And so we've been keeping them up to date over the last several years as we've worked towards this project. But we haven't had like an open public meeting on this. But we've talked with the city club of Springfield this session here. So we're trying to get the word out to the public. The Creswell Chronicle did an article today about the project. So I think the word's starting to get out there. There's the Register Guard is working on a piece right now. So I think that'll be out there in the community. And then the community has the opportunity to talk to our commissioners and public comment over the next 2 sessions while we're talking about this.
So have you entered into negotiations for that property in Goshen?
We have a public sale agreement where contingent on the board's approval, we do have a purchase option in place.
So it kind of sounds like, and forgive me if it comes across wrong, but it kind of feels like you've already kind of made up your mind and that it really doesn't matter what the public says at this point, that you're moving forward with this, whether we agree or whether the public agrees or anyone agrees. Is that correct?
Counselor, it's a decision for the county commissioners to make. And so we're lining it up with options for purchasing the property, entering into the contract, and potentially raising fees. And so the commissioners will be did I say counselor? The commissioners, the commissioners will be the deciders on this.
It just seems like a very large amount of money that you're looking at spending for this 10%, maybe 17 if BNG gets what they want, but for that increase in a self-imposed recovery rate that you're looking for, it just seems like a lot. And so, and it's not really insignificant. I mean, you keep saying it like it's no big deal, but it is a big deal. I mean, you're raising rates and you're doing, consecutively over a period of time, like putting a frog in a pot of water and then slowly turning up the heat, right? They don't realize it. But there's other costs that are going to be involved. I mean, what about when we do the leachate pipeline? Like, how much is that going to end up increasing rates? And then what if we do decide to move the Glenwood station? Now there's another increase that's going on. So, I mean, this isn't just one little amount that it just feels like you're sort of minimizing the impact. And I just have some concerns with that. Not that I don't know that it matters, but it just seems like it's like, this is what you want to do. And it doesn't really matter because it's that end goal. And that kind of is a bummer to hear.
Okay. Counselor, and I don't mean to minimize it. I'm just trying to lay out full project, I'm more sort of as the Public Works Director focused on the infrastructure
Mhm.
side of it. And 20 years of a landfill life is huge. We should calculate the millions of dollars, of that. And when we get to the end of our landfill life, the cost of exporting our waste out of county is going to be exorbitant. A new landfill hasn't been permitted in Western Oregon in, I think, 50 years. And I don't know that another one will, given our wet conditions here. So I'm, very focused on preserving this asset for future generations of Lane County citizens.
So has there been any outreach to our local stakeholders in ways that they could do this work without spending 135 million, like Santa Pac and EcoSort, like International Paper? Has there been conversations about how you could do this reduction of the greenhouse and stuff without building?
Yes,
this?
Counselor. We did a request for proposals process where we solicited for other options. We received two other options. One was from EcoSort, and one was another firm that had an interesting kind of garbage press squeeze process that would send the wastewater liquid to the wastewater treatment facility. Neither of those proposals got to our goals for both the recovery rate piece and the emissions piece. The EcoSort proposal focused primarily on construction demolition debris, which it doesn't produce a lot of methane gas. So we would still be interested in looking at that proposal in particular to try to increase our construction demolition recycling. But the bulk handling systems proposal was the one that rose to the top in that process.
Okay. Just looking through my notes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Michelle.
Thank you, Dan, for the presentation, and Jeff. Just a couple of questions, one to tack on to Councilor Doyle's regarding public input. I think I heard you at the last commissioners meeting say in reference to Glenwood that you would, if you were to take that project to look at it, for future, that you want to make sure that that's the right project for the community and that you would be looking for input at that point. What does that input look like as opposed to the input you're getting right now for this other project?
Thank you, Councilor. We were thinking about doing a survey to gauge how far people would drive and what kind of impact that would be for them. As I'm thinking about it, we've been thinking about it a lot over the last month, since that presentation. I think what the Glenwood project needs is a similar sort of vetting process where we look at not only a survey, but going through looking at potential properties, seeing if we can get purchase sale agreements for those, looking at what would be best, whether it be, moving the land or the transfer station to Goshen. Would it be, in East Springfield and a West Eugene, maybe do two, so people aren't having to drive so far if we do relocate, and then going through some design processes so we can get a realistic ballpark of what it would cost to relocate the transfer station. I don't think we have a really firm number on that. So it would be going through those similar processes. As far as public engagement, we were just thinking primarily that survey piece of it. We haven't done a survey around this project, and perhaps we should have. That just wasn't considered.
Okay. And then one other question. At that meeting, also, you were asked to prioritize between Leachade, Glenwood, and iMurph, and you had a response to that, and I just thought maybe you could share that here too.
Sure. So the iMurph project we're prioritizing because of the federal funds that are available for this project that are only available if we start by the end of next calendar year. And so we're talking for the energy production piece of it, there's a 40% tax credit on all that. So we're talking, millions of dollars that we have this unique time in history with all this federal stimulus money that's happening. I don't know that this project could pencil if we wait, another year on this. So that's why it's such a high priority. And also because it's been a high priority for the board. It's been in our strategic plan. It's been, part of our climate action plan. There are a number of drivers for this. And really the sooner the better. There's the proverb, when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, it would have been 20 years ago. The next best time is now. So if we can get started on the diverting waste, the longer it makes this asset last for us. So the second priority project was the pipeline. And that one also could take advantage of some federal stimulus money. It's a different pot of money. And it's also a project that's been a high priority for the board. The board it was called the Great Plan it was economic stimulus plan around development of Goshen. And so Goshen is hindered by not having a wastewater system. And so we would love to be able to move that project forward. Different pot of money that wouldn't affect this to the degree of other potential projects. And then the third one was relocating the Glenwood transfer station. And it's just, we're not very far along with that. It hasn't been made a high priority of the board. So I think it's a conversation that we need to have, jointly between the commission and the your city council here and elevate that as a priority. So that was why the ranking.
Thank you.
Steve.
Me, thank you. You mentioned tax credit. How does that work?
Tax credit, it's called the production tax credit. Typically, that's available for private entities to sell off a piece of their tax liability. And I'm not a private business owner, and I'm not sure how all that works to great detail. We do have Steve Miller here in the audience, who is the CEO of Bulk Handling Systems, who could probably answer that better if you would like to call him up. But with this federal stimulus money that's available right now, that's also extended into public entities. And I don't think I can speak well enough of how that works for the configuration of the tax credit, but I'd be happy to try to look into that more and get you some information.
Pretty simple, huh? Thank you. Okay. The methane situation, I remember that coming up years ago and EPUD stepping up and going in there to capture that. It has been very successful. I'm sure it's outdated by now. And of course, there's lots more to catch.
Mhm.
But anyway,
Mhm.
we've been working ahead on
It has been a
stuff.
great project.
And then I don't trust those anticipated rate rises being contained that small. And you didn't talk about commercial rates out there. You talked about residential rates. And I heard 3% per year, and then I heard 20%. I don't know what the heck that meant. And as far as commercials are concerned, and of course, it's going to be the ratepayers. And I think the public should know more about this. You're not going to like it, but we need to do it. They need to know. So what about the commercial?
Counselor, so I addressed that briefly, but we covered a lot of material. So sorry if I wasn't clear enough on that. So we talked about for the residential customer that the increases that we're talking about equate to 20% of that overall cost. For the commercial, we talked about that's more closer to the 30% range. So Santa Pack,
30% over what period?
30% of a garbage rate. So if a commercial company is paying their garbage bill, about 30% of that is the landfill disposal rate. And then looking at the cost per year. So Santa Pack gave us some numbers, and for the average commercial business, it was about a 3% increase over each year over a 6-year period. But then there were some anomalies. There were some, hospitals, large schools, and, those look a lot larger. But again, there are much larger businesses too. And, as far as impact to schools or, nonprofits, we don't get into setting garbage rates. That's between your hauler and the city. So, if you wanted to see discounts applied to specific entities like nonprofits, that would have to be an arrangement with your hauler.
The commercial residential people, they don't care about that. They want to know how much it's going to cost them each month. And you're not really telling us that.
So I guess the challenge, Counselor, is that it really varies, small business to the hospital, of how much tonnage they produce. So I can't tell you what the dollar amount is per month. All I can give you is about a percentage.
Okay.
And so for a kind of an average size business, it was about a 3% impact each of those years on their garbage bill, whatever that amount is. And we might have that actually.
That sounds pretty small.
So common commercial services of 125 pounds per yard increase per year was a $481 increase for like a sandwich shop. For a restaurant would be 1,316. So those look like, bigger numbers, but they're also, bigger businesses. So,
Uh, Anyway, I don't trust those numbers. One other thing, there's $180 million project in a year and a half or 2 years. Things don't move that fast around here. That's doing a pretty good job. I mean, the city, I'm trying to get the city to move on some stuff, and it just takes some years to get something going. And
but Counselor, we've been working on this project for the last 3 years, pretty solid. So, it's getting everything lined up, and then it's off to the races to do the construction piece of it. But those numbers that I just quoted came from Sanapac, from your hauler.
Okay. That's good. One last question is Coffin Butte. Are there some materials we cannot? Okay, I understand there's some materials we can't dump here. We have to take it to Coffin Butte. Is that true?
That is not true, actually, Counselor. They operate under the same rules that we do, that are regulated by the state.
Okay.
I will say they're a private business, and really it's about getting as much quantity in and profit. And so some materials we don't really want because we think it'll be a long-term liability, and they happily take because they're less, what is the word?
And then I hear they're going to be shutting down or being restricted also.
They are in a real bind right now, Counselor. If you've seen the news, they only have about 2 years left in their current landfill cell. They have another landfill cell that they're wanting to expand into, but it's part of it was they were planning to quarry out a bunch of rock there, like 2 million yards of rock that they're trying to excavate out quickly. So they're going to have to kind of limp along in that cell.
Yeah.
They were hoping for another expansion that would get them over 40 years. And that's probably not going to happen from what I've heard in the community up there.
Okay. So anyway, I've heard that there's just some things they couldn't dump here. They had to take up to Coffin Butte. If Coffin Buttes get restricted, then if they go out of business, where's it going to go? And that's just a question. That's for the future.
Yeah, they're probably looking at exporting to Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington, long way away.
Oregon,
Yeah.
Man, that's all your garbage a long ways.
Right. And that's what I'm trying to prevent for us in the future, even though it's not my generation, but the future.
Anyway, I'm really concerned about those rate numbers out there for the user. I mean, you're giving me all these numbers per year, but I want to know what the restaurant's going to pay really, and the businesses and the homes, different kinds of businesses. They're the ones they're going to have to bear the brunt of this. I wanted to make sure that it's fair to them. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
All right, I've got a couple of questions. So one of the things that we keep coming back to is this question about rates. And I know you guys were working with Sanapac to kind of agree upon numbers. So is there rates that in the copy of the letter that Sanapac provided, are those rates that the county agrees with?
Yes. Yes, Mayor. Although I will say that we've been having a lot of contract negotiations even up to today, where we think we may be able to raise that, lower that. So we were looking at like an 8% in the first year. We may be able to get that as low as 6.5, but we're still in the final negotiations on numbers, and there are different factors in play.
Right, but from a commercial accounts, I'm seeing things like hospitals paying $5,200 more in an increase in a month. Large apartment complexes, $1,289 a month. There's one that's $411 a month, right? Which it just Like, I'm just trying to wrap
Right.
my head around the difference in impact for rates,
Mhm.
because they really do vary widely between the
Right.
type of user we're talking about.
Yes, Mayor, but that, what that doesn't show is what is their current total bill? You know, I'm more interested in sort of the percentages because there's so much variation between a large apartment complex hospital versus, you know, a small sandwich shop.
Sure, and I think
Mhm.
one of the, I guess, challenges here with when we're talking specifically about rates, and I think overall the project is probably running too fast through this part of the conversation, is that when I hear different parts in the community, right, people are not agreeing upon a set of facts, right? Like, so you still have questions, right? Like, and you know, and the mind I keep coming back to is, are we all agreeing upon what these rates actually mean? Because that will make it easier for people to explain to folks in the community
Mhm.
about whether or not we choose to do this. And it still sounds like there's a little bit of a disconnect.
I don't know that there is, Mayor.
Okay.
We agree with the Santa Pac numbers,
Okay.
but what had been provided didn't show the full picture. It doesn't show what their total rate is, for example. But we agree with the percentages.
Okay. The other comment I want to make about rates, and then we can jump to a couple areas that I've got questions about, is I realize this is probably an issue for the county commission, more than it is for you guys as county staff, right? But based on what our franchise agreement is, we are the entity that is going to actually impose these, you know, rate increases on the users. And I have a real issue with how fast this conversation's going without us getting a chance to really truly weigh in, because we are the people that are going to actually vote the rate increases in. And, you know, if the project sort of jumps off, you know, we're gonna be stuck, right? And this is not the only rate increase that we've asked every single year for. Santa Pac is going to have, you know, obviously an increase to their costs that go along with that, right? So we're not really seeing the holistic picture. And again, that's an issue I got with the county commission more than I do with you guys from a staff perspective.
Understand.
The next, I guess, question that I have is really around this issue about flow control. And I keep listening for the clarity in the conversations. I've been following this for about the last month. Are you saying that we're never going to have flow control, that's off the table?
Mayor, I'm not saying that. I'm
Okay.
saying that one, I'm hoping that we don't have to have that conversation because I don't really want to set up a fight that we don't
No.
need. The second piece is that as far as my reading of Oregon statute is that we could only apply flow control outside of the city limits, but we're waiting for a county council opinion on that. But that's what's is my reading. That's what, if you just look at the plain language of it, it talks about our authority being outside of the cities. So I don't know if the board would ever consider that outside of the cities, but we're not proposing that at this time.
Under what conditions would you be recommending to the board that they pursue a conversation about flow control with the cities?
Mayor, I think we would want to engage in that if we're seeing risk for this facility to be able to operate that's not at financial detriment to the county. So if we build this facility and we need to guarantee a certain amount of tonnage coming into the facility for our agreement with bulk handling systems, and we're not able to meet that because large parts of the county are exporting out to another landfill, then I think we would need to engage in that. And not only because of the financial viability of this project, but also because our landfill rates support an entire system. So the free household hazardous waste program, you know, that's covered by our landfill rates.
Mm-hmm.
The community cleanup that Springfield does, that we give a fee waiver for, that's covered by our landfill rates. So there's a whole system of 15 transfer stations that's supported by our landfill rates. So if we're not able to sustain ourselves financially because waste is going out of the community and not paying into the system, then I think we would need to look at a flow control ordinance. And I would want to do that in partnership with the cities and hope that they would you want to sustain the system that we have.
You want to jump in with a question here?
Just back to the not rate flow, the
Flow control.
Flow control. So if I'm hearing you correctly, is that you don't want to approach that, but you're not willing to say that's off the table. So that is embedding a risk. And so you're asking for folks to make decisions based on a potential risk down the road. And we don't know if that's going to or occur or not occur. That's, as an elected person, it's kind of spooky to say, okay, I'm going to make a decision, but I'm not sure how it's going to happen. What's going to happen to the folks down the road? Because once we pull the trigger on this, it's not once the round's down the chamber, it's not going anywhere but straight out the barrel. That's fearsome for me.
Yes, Counselor, I understand. And it gives me concern as well. There is risk there. We're trying to mitigate that again by keeping these costs low to the haulers and providing these benefits to the haulers of having local options for processing and bringing their waste that I think will offset their operational costs. So I'm seeing it as not as big a risk because I don't think it's going to make financial sense for haulers to take their waste out of the county, and really not wanting to set up a big argument about that in the community at this point in time. One, I don't think we have the time to work through that. And also it may not be needed.
Victoria.
Thank you. First off, I appreciate the fact that you're very passionate about this. It's obvious that you feel very passionate about it. I just want to get back to, you were talking about the Santa Pac rates, and you were saying that you don't have the current rates. And it looks to me like they are there. And maybe I'm reading this wrong, but if you look at page 3, it says total waste bill per month, and then it says new waste bill. So they're showing you the rates that are current and then what the new rate is going to be.
Okay.
All right. So I think that's important, since that was part of what you were saying there.
Right. I guess it wasn't the total amount. I mean, we also don't have the total tonnage there. I was just wanting the whole picture, but we have the increase per month. We have the increase per year, total waste bill, some new waste bill. So
Yeah.
those are the pieces we have.
Yeah, it's just, it was confusing because
Sorry if
in the information, you were saying 11% for 4 years, and then it goes to 8, then it goes to 5. And then when you were talking, you said 8% and 8, and then goes to 5. So it's still an increase.
Yes. And
Yeah.
part of it in trying to summarize off of this is that there's 20 different rows on this, with each has a different percent increase ranging from, 33% to 10%. So, trying to summarize that down into, something more simple for the conversation is challenging.
Yeah, and it's easier to pick the one that's only $2. If it was up to me, the leachate pipeline would be by far and away the priority. I think that the risk that we take with that stuff being hauled, and the fact that that's necessary, and now you're saying that there's actually a pot of money that might be separate that could actually help with that, I would be pretty much all in if that's what you were talking about here.
And Councilor, I just wanted to say that we're not putting this as the kind of the second project and waiting to act on that. We're actively moving on that project. It's just held up right now by some land use issues that we're working through.
Okay. This is a really great discussion. This has really helped us, I think, a lot get our mind around this. One of the questions I also hear is, we do have a commingle site that is, in one of the mills, and they had some serious questions about, the cost and the impact. Has that been addressed with IP?
Mayor, it has not. We have not engaged in conversations. My understanding is that IP doesn't do significant processing of that commingle waste. Basically they pull out the cardboard that they would want. And we, with this facility, would imagine we would be entering into an agreement with IP to take the cardboard. But the rest of the material goes for further processing. So this facility would be different in that we would be able to have fully bales of HDPE plastic, and different commodities.
And I realize you guys are still under risk, under active negotiations, right? But I'm, when we were talking about the flow control question, who's carrying the financial risk here? Is it shared between in the public-private partnership? Is the county carrying it all? You're right.
Great,
I hear that
great
sort of
question, Mayor.
veiled,
Yeah.
and some of the conversation.
So Yes, we're still actively negotiating. There are a lot of different pieces on this. As far as risk goes, the county has some risk in that we need to guarantee a certain amount of tonnage coming to the facility to be processed. The county will pay to have that processed. Our benefit will be the landfill airspace that over time. And sorry, another piece of that is with the equation is host fee. So we're giving space for the commingle sorting line. So bulk handling systems will pay us a host fee for that. We'll also have a potential revenue share for revenues above and beyond a certain threshold for the sale of the recyclable commodities, also for the renewable natural gas. So there are a lot of different components on this. But I would say risk goes, there's also risk for bulk handling systems to be able to perform. There's a certain amount of diversion they have to achieve in sorting through the garbage. There's the quality of gas that they have to guarantee. There's the sale of the recyclables. When we talk about recycle markets being up and down, that risk won't be on the county. That'll be on bulk handling systems to market those materials and operate the facility. So those are some of the components. I'm not sure if I captured them all, but.
No, I know we're sort of putting you on the hot seat to ask a lot of different range of questions. And I think I can agree with Councilor Doyle here that the leachate line's, really an important part to this. And, and I understand they're kind of separate projects, but I just want to plug that conversation around, especially when I'm hearing what's going on in Creswell right now, which, and I know this is complicated, but getting that leachate line, in is going to help us on a lot of different elements.
We're excited about that project too, Mayor. Yeah.
Before I jump to the Glenwood transfer site and then wrap this thing up, I guess my sense of this is I don't ever, in the conversations that I see, I don't hear people, coming to some sort of agreement about, just the narrative of actually what's going on. And I don't know that that means, this, that, we have the wrong facts. I don't know that, but I hear a lot of questions still out there in the community. And I know that the pressure with the tax credit is for to run here as fast as you can. But there, when I listen to what the haulers have told me, when I, hear what IP has said, just more broadly, there's still a lot of questions in the community about what's the benefit, what are we trying to accomplish, and do we have the right size of facility that makes some sort of sense here?
Yes, Mayor. It is a challenge, with the timelines on this project. But there are also lots of conversations happening out in the community, and there are different interests at play. One thing that should be acknowledged, with solid waste, while it's a utility, it's unique in that there's competition in it, that's not happening at the wastewater treatment plant, for example. So there are different haulers that have different interests. There's different processors that have different interests, and they're competing. You're unique here having one hauler for your community, but in Eugene, there are 3 different haulers operating. And so there are, lots of conversations happening and concern about competition between each other with our facility that we're proposing. And so there are just lots of conversations happening, and I'm not sure anyone's satisfied with having all the information.
And we're never going to make everybody happy, right? But there's big differences in some of the just core facts. Like when you tell the story, you say like that this should be a competitive advantage in the way that it drives the tonnage into the facility, right? But I've yet to hear, like, when I've watched the Lane County meetings, I've seen it at City Club, I've yet to hear anybody else but Lane County sort of say that that's true, right? And one of the things I'm looking for is people to kind of say the same thing and go, okay, yeah, I could see how that's a competitive advantage, which tells me there's probably more work to be done between the county and some of these other partners. It doesn't mean that it can't be accomplished, but there's still a gap there. All right. Okay, Glenwood transfer site.
Yes.
It's been a priority for this community for 20 years. And I know there's a lot of discussions that need to be happened, and we're going to be, talking to the commission about it. It's not going to get solved tomorrow, but I just want to make sure it's on their radar someplace that it's being actively worked. Is there, any active work going on with the Glenwood transfer site?
Do you want to talk to that, Jeff?
Yeah, so we the board did direct us to do the public outreach survey. To Dan's point, I don't think it's going to behoove us to do a survey of whether or not this entire community wants us to stay or leave Glenwood. We've done some work on that before. What we're going to propose to do is go to them with 3 options. And maybe they rank them, but so there's a public outreach survey that we're going to do. There's also work right now with a consultant. They're looking at 3 options. One being what it would cost to stay in Glenwood, and this body may be happy to realize that seems to be the most expensive option for rebuild right now. The second option, to Dan's point, would be one new facility to replace it, which would probably be out Beltline 99 area. That's really the only viable area zone that would work. The third option is to do one, if you all were interested in that, somewhere out near IP for a smaller station, a larger one in West Eugene that might serve the Veneta community as well with that aging. So we're actively looking at price options for all 3, what it would cost to build all 3 of those options, and then have the public input on kind of preferences and kind of determine which might work the best. And then, to your point, look at how you fund it.
So I would say this is what we're proposing, but we haven't moved significantly along on these, but we're getting ready to. We have been pretty focused on this project for the last few months, but plan on moving forward in that work. But if there are other ways of doing this, we'd love to hear your input. And as I've been thinking over this over the last week, I think it might be great to have a joint elected officials meeting on this where our elected body could talk to you all and we could come to some agreement of what a vetting process would look like with some concrete milestones and objectives that would help move this along, because it has just been sitting out there for a long period of time.
All right, that's actually really a great update. So thank you both for coming out. I know it was a little bit of round robin about, questions, but there's a lot going on, and thanks for sharing the information.
Certainly. Thank you for your interest and your concern. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Before we adjourn, one of the recommendations I guess I have is that is this is happening with the county right now, is maybe we submit a letter to sort of summarize all of our, input to the county and ask staff to draft us a letter. And I'm curious what people think of that.
Well, they should address our concerns. I think a letter would be appropriate, so if all of us had concerns, we all had questions, and I think if those are delineated on a letter, that would help the commissioners see what our concerns are and be able to address them instead of after the triggers.
So Nancy, could we have somebody summarize kind of where we're at, and then so that we can submit it to the county?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. All right, we are adjourned for the work session. We've got about 18 minutes before we kick off for the regular session. So we will be back in 18 minutes. Thank you. Oh, for something. I'm going to call the city council work session to order.
Mayor Van Gordon.
Here.
Counselor Weber.
Here.
Counselor Moe. Here. Counselor Rodley.
Here.
Counselor Blackwell. Counselor Doyle.
Here.
And Counselor Pictionary. Here.
And we'll correct the record. It is the regular meeting, and Counselor Blackwell is excused for the evening. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. As we begin our meeting tonight, there are 2 designated times for public testimony this evening under public hearings and business from the audience. If you are attending in person, please complete the request to speak card located at the entrance of the council chambers and give it to the city recorder. If you're joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak to either of those times, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. The order of public testimonies is as follows: anyone in the council chambers, and anyone who's raised their hand online. First item, please.
The first item is, do we have a Springfield upbeat tonight?
Yes, we do. We're giving the signal to them. You guys are coming right up front. We right into the doors over there.
In the orchestra pit.
For the record, I was expecting like 3 people. Okay. Which one of you wants to say what the fundraiser's for? You're not playing the OSU fight song tonight, just to be clear.
No, no.
Well, it's up to people come out to businesses for $2 per fight song. All right, when you guys are ready. And thank you very much. Don't go anywhere because we're going to have the council stand up behind you so that Neil can take a picture. Come in. It was brilliant.
It was brilliant. Picture or the idea? Something. No, it's like.
To sign up and contact us.
Right on.
Good job.
And if anybody on the crowd wants to add $500, they'll play the OSU fight song. I had to try for you guys. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming. You did great. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, Next item, please.
The next item is the consent calendar.
I'd like to pull item C from the consent calendar and make a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo, Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos.
I'm the one that asked him to pull the C Street project. Only because. What? Was it D Street? Okay, wrong street. Because I want everybody to know this was a citizen initiated project. It took about 3 years to get this done and not everybody is happy. But what's going to be built in the next year, $350,000, is pedestrian, bicycle, and automobile safety issues along that street. And it's going to be 20 years before it really gets fixed, if ever. But in the meantime, it's going to be a much safer corridor, which a lot of people talk about it. They're very concerned about it. And so we're doing something about it, not everything, but the city has listened to you, and here we are. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to make a motion to approve item C from the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, Neil, could you call the vote?
Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Aye.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes.
Motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
Next item is public hearings. You have 3 public hearings tonight. Public hearing number 1 is annexation of territory to the city of Springfield, annexing approximately 25.2 acres of industrial property located at 5230 High Banks Road. That's map 17-02-28-00, tax lot 402, and a portion of tax lot 405. This is ordinance number 1, an ordinance annexing certain territory, vacant parcels addressed as 5230 High Banks Road and identified as assessor's map 17-02-28-00, tax lot 402, and a portion of tax lot 405 to the city of Springfield and Willamette Park and Recreation District, adopting a severability clause and providing an effective date. Andy Limbert is here for the staff item.
Thanks, Neil. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. This request for annexation is for property that adjoins the former Blue Water Boat site, if anyone remembers that from back in the day. It's now Attune Foods. That portion is already annexed to the city. South of this site is the Latter-day Saints Bishop's Storehouse. So this particular site is a former gravel quarry, and it is being actively reclaimed as we speak under a permit from the state. The request for annexation is to facilitate future development of this site. Would likely require a change of zoning to convert to some type of industrial use such as outdoor storage. In the meantime, though, this request for annexation is being presented tonight with a recommendation to continue the public hearing. We do not have an executed annexation agreement right now. One of the challenges that the applicant and staff face is there is not storm sewer extended to this property, and so need to work out the details of how stormwater could be managed on the site, and if necessary, delivered to the public system in the event of overflow. So those are some details and intricacies that staff wants to work out. It'll likely take us through Christmas break, and it'll be returned to council for consideration on January 2nd. So that's the recommendation before you this evening, is to have the public hearing, open it, continue it to January 2nd, allow staff and the applicant time to get an annexation agreement completed and before you for that second reading and adoption potentially. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? I think we are good.
Okay. And I do know that the applicant, I believe, is online and may wish to present. So
I do have a question. A question of annexation because of storm sewers. I'm not quite sure I understand that. Why don't we annex it? Then when they want to plan a development there, then they have to make that connection.
that's correct. Yeah, the staff and the city through the annexation agreement want to detail and confirm that that would be the responsibility of the applicant in this case, because the public system just is not at their doorstep. And normally, in most annexations, we're looking at sanitary sewer, and often the existing utilities for drainage are already in existence. That is not the case here, so that's something that's being worked out.
I'd like to see that flexibility. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Andy. Oh, Victoria.
Just really quick, is it because of the type of area that it is that there couldn't be on-site retention? So I'm like
That's one option, and that just needs to be confirmed that that would be because
like a soakage trench or something like that.
correct,
Okay.
correct. It's because of ideally everything would be managed on site. It's a little uncertain as to, because of the future development plans and you converting it from what essentially was a pond to something that is now impervious. And the size of the area, which will be at least 20 acres of impervious surface potentially, staff wants to be very sure that there's not drainage problems that could potentially lead to impacting other sites that are not inside the UGB, not of the applicant's ownership, and not within the public system that we can reach. So
Okay.
that's the reason for that.
All right, last call before we let Andy go. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and open the public hearing. I have one card. It's Zach Galloway.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Zach Galloway. I'm a senior planner with TBG Architects and Planners. We're based at 132 East Broadway in Eugene. We're representing the applicant this evening. And so first, I'd like to extend our thanks, appreciation for your recent change to the fees to the annexation process. By our analysis and our experience statewide, it brings your fees much more into alignment with what we expect to see in other jurisdictions. So thank you for that. As you saw in the application materials, and as you've heard from Andy, we do largely concur with everything before you this evening. There are the two outstanding items that he has highlighted, one being the urban facilities and services criteria, which we think the application is actually sound at this point. We understand city staff wants to work through those details. Mike Reeder, who's our legal counsel, is joining us as well. He'll speak to that in more detail. The other item is the annexation agreement, which we're meeting with staff next week to address some of the outstanding items there. So we appreciate the continued collaboration with city staff to get that worked out, get those details hammered out. And so with that, I do just want to let you know that the applicant and myself are here to address those planning level questions, and that Mike Reeder is online as legal counsel for the project. He has a few comments as well. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other cards in the room. Do we have anybody with their hand up?
There are two hands up right now. Mike Reeder, followed by Chris McAllister. And Mike, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Can you hear us, Mike?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Could you state your name?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you state your name and location for the record?
Yes, my name is Mike Reeder, 375 West 4th Avenue, Suite 205, Eugene, Oregon, 97401. I represent the applicant in this matter. I'm legal counsel, and I am here tonight to talk about just a couple of issues. The first one is the urban level services and the requirement that an annexation have the capacity to have urban level services, and those key urban services include stormwater. What we want to do is the applicant wants to make clear is that the stormwater can be retained on site. And in addition, there are other key urban services that, while they can be provided on site, they are not necessarily required depending on the type of development that will occur out on this property. So annexation is a bit different than, say, site review or other land use applications where detail is required to show in specific detail how the urban level services will be provided. Annexation is more broad, and that is so that the city and or the applicant can provide those services in a timely manner. We believe that all urban level services will be able to be provided in a timely manner. Second, I wanted to talk about the annexation agreement. So there are certain items of the annexation agreement that need to be worked out between city staff and the applicant. One of the staff for quite some time to have a path forward for developing this property as intended by the applicant, and we appreciate the effort by staff. And just want to reiterate that we have the ability to provide key urban services should they be necessary. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to try and provide any answers to those questions that you might have.
All right, thank you, Mike. Is Chris still got his hand up?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, Chris, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Thank you, members of the council and Mr. Mayor. I understand this is a public hearing, and I would just like to advise the council to not add more annexation to our community until we start to problem solve and come up with concrete plans for what we're doing with the already on annexed lands or near abutting annexed lands, such as in Glenwood and along our perimeter along South 28th Street. We are having an unprecedented time in terms of trying to establish with homeless services and accounting for the population that is within our borders. And I feel like unanswered questions, which would not be allowed in social circles, are allowed to go through this process. And so I feel like we need to have concrete plans before we approve this. We have a lot of land and a lot of access points where we did not consider these types of situations, such as when we did the roundabout in Glenwood. And there are dozens of people not set up with sanitation or property who are waiting to annex into the city, but are told that they have to wait and get $50,000 to $100,000 to tie into existing infrastructure. If we only find ways around our industrial, we will lose our population. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Neil, has anybody else got their hand up?
No other hands for this item.
All right.
I move to continue the public hearing until the city council regular session at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024.
Second.
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo.
Yes.
Counselor Rodley.
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Aye.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
Next item is your public hearing number 2. This is annexation of territory to the city of Springfield. Annex approximately 4.42 acres of residential property located at 954 66th Street. It's map 17-02-27-00, tax lot 2002. This is ordinance number 2, an ordinance annexing certain territory. Vacant parcel addresses 954 66th Street and identified as assessor's map 17-02-27-00, tax lot 2002 to the city of Springfield and Willamette Park and Recreation District, withdrawing the same territory from the Mackenzie Fire and Rescue District, adopting a severability clause and providing an effective date. And Andy Limbert is here for the staff item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This annexation request is for a rectangular piece of property at the north end of 65th Street, north of Thurston Road. Property is owned by Springfield Utility Board, and it has been identified as a potential location for a water filtration plant. Would be a drinking water facility. Springfield Utility Board owns the property, and they're requesting annexation to facilitate development plans for the site. There has been testimony submitted, including this evening. You have an email that was provided after the staff report was prepared. It was actually from today. And the adjacent property owners objecting to the annexation. The annexation is one initial step to allow for future development plans to be even considered in this area. Staff has a general understanding of what the facility may look like, but there have been no conceptual plans, no publicly shared plans as to the intensity of the development, the scale of the development. It would be presumably something similar to other sub facilities with pump stations. There would be personnel at the site from time to time. Some of the concerns regarding congestion and traffic and industrial vehicles may or may not be realized once the site is in operation. A lot of automation tends to go into these sites, so it's just one, I guess, perspective from the sub applicant that it's not going to be a intensively occupied and utilized facility. That said, it is not intended or proposed for residential use, so it will be different from the existing neighborhood that's adjoins it. So again, the recommendation from staff is to continue the public hearing to January 2nd. The reason for this is there are issues with sanitary sewer at this location. There will be treatment water from the future facility. They'll have to be disposed of into the public sanitary sewer system. It's not toxic, but it is contains water chemicals, organics, and the volume of effluent is the concern, not the type of effluent. Right now, there are residential scale sewer lines that are stubbed into this area, and they don't necessarily have the capacity to accommodate that type of daily water loading on the system. So city staff and the applicant sub, as well as through the updating of the sanitary sewer master plan that's ongoing right now, are looking at a capacity analysis. There needs to be some further work done on that to inform the annexation agreement that'll be brought back to you, hopefully executed in time for the January 2nd meeting. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Joe.
Andy, do you have, my concern is operational noises within a residential area. And does anybody know if there's going to be a noise and people living across the fence from it?
Uncertain at this time as to whether facilities, pumps, for example, that could be contained within a like a masonry block structure like they are in some of the neighborhoods could mitigate or batten the sound sufficiently to not cause concern to the neighborhood. Some of the other unknowns include chemicals that might be added, chlorine, for example, if that's added to the water system. And where exactly on the site and the proximity of what might be noise generating facilities to the existing homes. Could they be opposite corner from closer to the school site, for example, as opposed to backing onto residences? Right now, there is really no site plan, but that's something that would have to be addressed with sub and their planning for this facility in conjunction, because the next steps will require public notification as well. So the neighborhood will be essentially viewing this and responding accordingly all along the way.
So I'm concerned in regards to negatively impacting the neighborhood and their quality of life. And that, for example, a vehicle if you can hear their music from a vehicle more than 50 feet away is a violation. So the plant should be under those same standards. If there's something that a car can be cited for playing their stereo so loud enough to be heard 50 feet away, then that substation should be under that same standard, because that is a quality of life issue.
Agreed.
So,
yeah, correct. And it's not an industrially zoned property, nor would it be if they change the zoning to accommodate a utilities facility.
Right.
So all of these things are, I guess, potential impacts that could potentially be mitigated, and sub likely listening to this hearing this evening will be well informed of the concerns of the council and the neighborhood regarding noise, odors, activity, traffic impacts, and that sort of thing. So that should hopefully help to in their planning for the facility down the road.
Well, if they're listening, they need to hear me and saying that I will absolutely oppose this 100% if there is a negative impact to the neighbors. It's that they didn't buy those homes thinking there's going to be a facility, a clean water facility there, and all of a sudden they have this there. It's that, to me, I would oppose.
Correct.
So if they can do it and be as quiet as a mouse for them, that's fine.
Understood.
But if not, we're gonna have a problem.
Understood. Yeah, staff does not have the necessary details as to what would comprise this. There are other facilities that operate independently and without staff in you know, adjacent to residential lots in Mountain Gate, for example,
Right.
other locations where there's reservoir tanks. So those are pumping facilities for the pressure levels
Yeah,
of the
but
water system.
those are up in the woods and away from houses.
Correct.
So
So
I'm just laying that
Yeah.
groundwork out now, so that way it's not a surprise to anybody
absolutely.
at
Yeah.
the next reading, because I'm going to be asking the same question.
I know that your concerns are shared by the neighborhood.
Victoria.
With all due respect on this conversation that you guys are having, I don't see how that is stuff that we should be talking about when it comes to the annexation. I understand and when it comes to development, but as part of the criteria for an annexation, what's being developed in there usually shouldn't even be factored in, should it? I mean, is it part of the criteria in Springfield that you look at that?
No, it's just a matter of whether it can be served with urban services. and
Okay,
it
so
can
that's what
be.
that's what I'm asking. Like, I'm not saying I don't disagree with the sound stuff. I'm just saying that shouldn't be part of our decision making when it comes to whether or not we're going to annex this property in or not.
I guess it is fair to I guess raise the issue because it was raised in testimony. So Councilor Pictionary is acknowledging, I guess, the testimony that was provided this evening, which does deal with quality of life issues. It's correct. It's not a criteria, but I guess it's a consideration down the road. So the public hearing is the opportunity for the neighborhood to be heard and to express their concerns. And hopefully those concerns will be listened to and addressed through site planning and other mitigation.
Sure, I just think that this public needs to know that we have specific things that we have to, when we say yes or no, it's because we're basing it on what we have in front of us that we're allowed to judge that situation on. So.
Agree. The council has more latitude than staff does in reviewing this. So I understand.
Joe, go ahead.
So for the record, I'm not saying I oppose it. I'm just putting that information out so it's out there and they can be considering that as it moves forward, because that will come up at some point.
Understood. Staff takes that as an advisement. Thank you.
All right, any other questions before we open the public hearing? All right. Then I'm going to open the public hearing. I don't think I have any cards. I don't have any public cards in the council chambers. Is there anybody online?
Yes, we have one speaker, Chris McAllister, and Chris, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I support Councilor Doyle's comments on this and that there are items that need to be considered on the public record. And I wish that there was such opposition for quality of life in other parts of our system, such as the annexation of Glenwood. So I'd like to see that this is the type of conversation that continues to happen as we look at expanding our footprint. And I appreciate the work that the staff and sub have put into on trying to expand our boundaries and better serve our entire community, including increasing access to sanitation and other clean water supports, as those are often used as complaints about expanding our services to help our indigenous peoples. So I support this concept, whereas I'm still not favored for for-profit annexations. This seems like a public good and a public interest. Thank you for your time and your service.
Neil, do we have anybody else?
No other hands for this item.
I'd like to make a motion to move this to continue to the public. I move to continue the public hearing until the city council regular session at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024.
Second.
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber.
Yes.
Counselor Moe.
Yes.
Counselor Rodley.
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell. Counselor Doyle.
Aye.
And Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
Next item is public hearing number 3. That's the annexation of territory to the city of Springfield. Annex approximately 0.86 acres of residential property located at 1010 Kinsley Avenue, map 18-02-06-24, tax lot 3800, and concurrently annex an abutting 45-foot wide by approximately 213-foot long segment of Kinsley Avenue public right-of-way. This is ordinance number 3, an ordinance annexing certain territory, residential parcel addressed as 1010 Kinsley Avenue and identified as assessor's map 18-02-06-24, tax lot 3800, and an abutting segment of Kinsley Avenue public right-of-way to the city of Springfield, withdrawing the same territory from the Kinsey Rural Fire Protection District, adopting a severability clause and providing an effective date. And Andy Limbert is here for this item.
To complete the trifecta tonight. This proposed annexation, this annexation request is for property right at the corner of Kinsley Avenue and Jasper Road. Recently, the sanitary sewer was extended south from Jasper Road along Kinsley Avenue to serve the Mountainville subdivision, which you can see developing on the west there. Many of the lots are actually built on right now. And so this was one of the primary impetus reasons for the applicant to request annexation. They don't have to extend the sewer on their own. Actually, a sewer connection was stubbed into their front property. And so they are requesting the annexation to facilitate the connection of the existing house to sanitary sewer. They also have approximately half of the property is vacant. So there is further development potential on this property. And that's the other reason is to possibly partition property or add more dwelling units on the site. The concurrent annexation of Kinsley Avenue is to bring it into the city limits. There are city facilities there. It is not fully developed, but south of this property, the new Mountainville subdivision did improve the western half of Kinsley Avenue. There's curb gutter sidewalk there. So eventually, with further development on this property, there will be curb gutter sidewalk and that will allow for urban street improvements along the frontage. So that's the request. It's a private property owner that's making the request this evening. And again, staff is recommending continuing this to January 2nd, just to be consistent with the other properties. There are no particular outstanding issues with this property. The applicants agreed to the annexation agreement. I believe it's in your packet this evening. They will be pursuing plumbing permits to get the house connected, decommissioning septic, that sort of thing. Similar to a health hazard annexation, this can proceed in advance of concluding the annexation. They've got it underway. Once they pay the necessary fees, then that connection can occur, and then the annexation can be concluded by the council later. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them tonight.
Joe,
Just a quick one. Does this have, does this property have anything to do with the LID we did back several years ago for that southern edge of Jasper Road?
Not this particular location. There are other areas just to the east
Right.
of this location where along Osage and I believe
That's right.
40, it's a little bit further east
Okay.
than this where there was that connection. In this case, it was a developer initiated construction of the sanitary sewer, which will benefit other residents on Kinsley should they choose to annex and connect.
Thank you.
any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open the public hearing. We don't have any cards in the room. Are there any hands?
No hands.
I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing until the city council regular session at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024.
Second.
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Counselor Weber.
Yes.
Counselor Mo.
Yes.
Counselor Rodley.
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell. Counselor Doyle.
Aye.
And Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
Next item is business from the audience.
Do we have any cards in the? Travis Sinclair?
All right. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. My name is Travis St. Clair. I was born here in Oregon and lived in Lane County since 1984. Or yes, right about then, kind of dating myself. I'm here to express my concern about the IMRF program that you heard about earlier. I believe that it'll impact my job in the recycling industry. And I believe the Lane County already has a number of important projects in the works that should take priority of it. In 1996, I began my career in recycling. At that time, we were in a small location over in Eugene. Today, we are in our third location in Springfield, out at 48th and G, excuse me. We have been collecting recyclables in this community all of those years and sending the material into the Springfield mill. It has been recycled here locally. It's actually new paper before it even leaves our community. The vast majority is sorry, I jumped all over myself, a little bit of nerves there. Not only is this environmentally responsible by limiting the impact of the trucks that are on the road, but it also provides many living wage jobs here in our area. And to that, as a single father, my career has provided for my two children, not only in the financial means to support my family, but in many times to support the social support from those that I've worked with for decades now. They are far more than just coworkers. They are my friends. They are my family. My children are now grown on their own. My son is making his career at the same location, looking to begin his family. This site supports almost 30 families and their futures with a living wage, great benefits, while supporting the sustainability goals of our community. I just do not see this as the right solution for the residents of Lane County, and I urge the Springfield City Council to ask our county commissioners to postpone this proposal and work with industries like International Paper to help achieve the sustainability goals we're already working on and meet those objectives. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. All right, that was the only card in the room. Do we have any hands?
There's one hand raised. It's Chris McAllister. And Chris, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Springfield staff, I'm honored to be a Springfield resident and citizen. I was born in the hospitals here. I went to the schools here, and I choose to try my trades, whether they are social service or community building within our borders. That said, I am very troubled by the fact that with some of our counselors, quality of life only extends to housed people. We had a young man commit suicide 2 days ago who was not able to come into a Springfield place, even though his parents were displaced in the guest house foreclosure, the condemnation rather. We are struggling to keep our Springfield tax base inside our city limits. We are struggling to build opportunities within our UGB, which is the only places where our unhoused are told to be. We go and we respond to calls to the quarries, to the paper mills, to the parks. We pull our people out of the street when they're at the post office because they're too unsightly for people to be able to do their business. We beg for places to have people go when it's too cold to be outside. And that's relative depending on your age and your vulnerability. If you are 50, but you have hepatitis C and are on meds and diabetic and have no legs, your options are very limited. And the offer of a top bunk at the Navigation Center on 100 River Avenue only goes so far when you can't even lift yourself up above the bar. Our people deserve better. I had to hospice one of my teaching aides in one of my shelters last year. It almost broke me because this was the man who worked with our developmentally disabled to help give them a second chance here in Springfield. And we did not have a place for him to be. I had to put him in another city. Another person, over 20 years in Springfield, a veteran of our country, had to die alone in a hotel room in Junction City during the marathon because we didn't have any place for him to be. Now, I understand that there's a fear of outsiders. There's a fear of change. I remember back in the day when I was growing up in this town where we took care of our own, where we solved problems and where we worked with everybody. I really wish that we had that kind of conversation happening instead of send your troubles to Eugene, send your people to Eugene, not our problem. Whether they are in RVs or on our streets because there's no place to be, or when it's cold enough to activate the volunteers, not paid staff, not emergency staff, but volunteers, often in our seniors population, that's when I know that we have gone too far away from our roots. I implore every single person who is elected in this town to remember who your people are. They are not the county's people, they are your people. They are your ward, they are your future generations. They are our graduating class. They are our next builders welders, and teachers. Please let our people grow.
Thank you. Are there any more hands up, Neil?
No more hands for this item.
Okay, is there any council response? All right, next item, please.
Next item is correspondence and petition. There's one item there. It's a copy of a letter sent to the Lane County Board of Commissioners on September 25th, 2023, and updated on November 1st, 2023.
I'd like to make a motion to accept for filing the correspondence and petition to the commissioners.
Second.
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Aye.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
Next item is ordinances. You have 5 ordinances this evening. Ordinance number 1, a comprehensive plan map clarification project. This is ordinance number 4, amending the Eugene Springfield Metropolitan Area General Plan, or the Metro Plan, and Springfield Comprehensive Plan to adopt the Springfield Comprehensive Plan map and land use element, amending the Downtown Refinement Plan, Gateway Refinement Plan, Glenwood Refinement Plan, East Kelly Butte Refinement Plan, East Main Refinement Plan, Mid Springfield Refinement Plan, and Q Street Refinement Plan, amending the Springfield Development Code, adopting a severability clause and a savings clause, and providing an effective date. And Chelsea Hartman is here for this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. I'm really glad you had to read all of that and not me tonight.
Repeat that, please.
This is a follow-up to the October 16th joint meeting with the board. All of the materials are largely the same from that meeting. I just wanted to highlight some new information. So no public comment was received at that public hearing or following it. Staff did identify some changes to the ordinance to make its effective date March 1st, 2024, and to include a savings clause that allows for any adopted amendments to the Metro Plan diagram or any of the refinement plan diagrams that are adopted between the adoption of this ordinance and its effective date to be reflected in the comprehensive plan map. So just allowing any amendments that occur in that time to remain effective. We also updated the staff report to finalize it so that it's reflecting adoption and rather than a proposal. And lastly, after council adopts the ordinance, the board is scheduled to take action on the Lane County ordinances that are related to this project on January 9th, 2024. And short and sweet.
Are there any questions? I just have one brief comment. Thank you for this, right? Like, I know it's a pretty technical piece of work, but and all the work that we want to be competitive, make the city more competitive for development and economic development, this kind of stuff really does help. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Steve.
This is remarkable what we did. Every refinement plan has been modified to some little degree, not a whole lot. A lot of them need more change in the future. But what happened was when we went through this, nobody came and testified against it or for it. That sort of bothers me a little bit because this is an opportunity for them to have a say in this stuff, and they didn't take it. Maybe later on they'll wish they had, but we're doing the best we can to represent them. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 4.
Second.
Could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo.
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Aye.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
Next item is item number 2, the stormwater post-construction requirements update. This is ordinance number 5, an ordinance amending the Springfield Development Code related to post-construction site runoff and stormwater management for new development and redevelopment, adopting a savings clause and a severability clause, and providing an effective date. Haley Campbell is here for this item.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. As discussed in the report, this was a part of the permit, the MS4 permit. The council held a joint work session and public hearing with the board on November 6th No public comment was provided during the hearing or after the hearing. Staff updated the staff report for just to show that the amendments were adopted rather than proposed. Those are the only changes made. And we expect that the third reading for the ordinance will be with the board on December 12th, 2024. Are there any questions?
December 12th, 2024.
I'm sorry, 2023. I
Oh,
apologize.
That's a long,
Head.
government time is slow, but I don't know that slow.
You caught me, yes.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 5, please.
Second.
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Aye.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
Your third item is the parking code amendment. This is the climate friendly and equitable communities. Ordinance number 6, an ordinance amending the Springfield Development Code related to on-site parking regulations as required by the Oregon Transportation Planning Rule, adopting a savings clause and a severability clause and providing an effective date. And Drew Larson is here for this item.
Thank you, Neil. Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, this is the second reading regarding the climate-friendly and equitable communities parking reform. We did discuss, there was a couple changes in the legislative that we did discuss in the first reading regarding parking lots over a half acre, as well as updating the staff report reflecting the permanent rules that were adopted on November 2nd. The staff report had previously spoken to the rules that were proposed, but they have been officially adopted by the state. And so the staff report has been amended to reflect that. Thank you.
You're up.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 6.
Second.
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo.
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Aye.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
Item number 4 is minor code amendments. This is ordinance number 7, an ordinance amending the Springfield Development Code to correct minor errors and omissions in ordinance 6443, adopting a savings clause and severability clause and providing an effective date. And Mark Russ is here for this item.
Before Mark starts, Neil, is everybody in Pascal's group presenting tonight?
I think we might have left 1 or 2 people out, but for the most part.
All right, go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, we all get a chance tonight, so keep the face fresh in front of you tonight. I'll keep mine really short and sweet. Nothing has changed from this matter since it was before you and joint with the Board of Commissioners on November 6th. We have received no public comments. There was no testimony at the public hearing, and we do expect the board to hear this also on December 12th, 2023. And with that, be happy if you adopt the ordinance tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 7.
Second.
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber.
Yes.
Counselor Mo.
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle.
Aye.
And Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
This is item number 5, the fire code ordinance corrections. This is ordinance number 8, an ordinance to amend ordinance number 6458 relating to the adoption of the 2022 Springfield Fire Code by adopting, amending, or adding sections of the 2021 International Fire Code, or the IFC, as promulgated by the International Code Council and as adopted and amended by the state of Oregon as the 2022 Oregon Fire Code, or the OFC. And Christina Kraz is online for this item.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I do consider that Neil has to read those titles when I write these ordinances, but this one was shorter than it could have been. The ordinance before you tonight is essentially a housekeeping set of corrections to the fire code that the council adopted on June 5th, 2023 via ordinance 6458, and that became effective August 1st. The purpose of these amendments is to match the Springfield Fire Code more completely to the one that was adopted in Eugene, just based on different processes and different timelines. The city of Eugene's code was enacted later in the summer before the August 1st deadline. And in the process of getting Eugene's ready to go, there was just some further corrections made to clarify definitions, some better reorganizing of the code. And so the intent of this ordinance is just to change what was adopted in June to match what Eugene has adopted. And that is because Eugene Springfield Fire is a functionally combined department, and the Eugene Springfield Fire Marshal enforces the fire code on behalf of both cities. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer what I can. Otherwise, our fire marshal, Chief Worthington, is also here in the audience and can answer any substantive questions that you have about the code. From my perspective, none of the changes rise to the level of being differences in policies between what was adopted in June versus today.
All right, are there any questions? All right, this is no action required, first reading only. Next item, please.
Any business from the city council?
Go ahead.
I do. I sometimes go to these subcommittees that we have, and I often go to the police task force meeting. I'm not part of it. I sit back as part of the audience. And so a couple of months ago, our chief of police gave a report on the policy manual. Very, very well done. But what I was struck by was he got down to the minority section where absolutely equal treatment to everybody all the time, period. And then he said this. He says, if you don't feel that way, you can complain to the police department. You can complain to the city. You can complain to the state. But then he said, I hope they call me first because I want to know. I like that.
All right, Victoria?
Just really quick, I wanted to say that I had the pleasure of attending a graduation at the fire department where we had 4 recruits that the way I understood it is a fairly new program for EMTs. And these were folks that sort of forego, or how to put that, going into the full paramedic firefighter program to help facilitate and start this program. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to those people and just say great job to the fire department. I'm really proud to have these first responders that work for our city.
Okay, anybody else? All right, I did get a note from Cornerstone Community Housing today. They announced that they have achieved funding for their Springfield apartments, which is a development up on 16th Street. That we've been talking to them about, that public-private partnership and that open land for a very long time. I'm very excited for them. It's going to provide some needed housing to the community. All right. Next item, please.
Any business from the city manager?
No business, excuse me, no business this evening.
All right, and any business from the city attorney?
No business.
All right. That looks like a wrap on everything. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. We are adjourned.